now it's almost noon and it's time for a word from another of our sponsors, Ukrainian Stock Photo Bank Deposit Photos, a great success story from Ukraine actually, and they have set up an amazing photo corner on the iforum grounds. They have professional grade lighting and other kinds of equipment when you can make yourself a great portrait and make your Facebook friends jealous as hell. Just find the deposit photos on and have a great portrait of yourself, of your friends, with your friends made. Now, the next speaker has asked me to just introduce him as Jan, and Jan will talk about experiments. As a host, I can see the description of his speech, and I can only say that it consists of a lot of abbreviation which I did not understand. So, Jan, please go ahead and try to explain them.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm going to speak a little bit of how to validate your product, and once you validate it, how to find the product market fit. Okay, in the world, products either solve a problem or satisfy a desire. Meaning, like if I had 20 more kilos on me, I'll have a health issue in terms of my weight, but I would love to be 20 kilos less, so I'll be much more handsome. So that's the whole point in between, to find sort of the problem or the desire. I mean, we're running several accelerator programs, and almost in all of them, teams comes up to us and ask whether, what problem Twitter actually solves or what problem Snapchat actually solves. Actually, these are the products, particularly social media or messaging applications, are mostly products for satisfying desires. Now, to give a better example, these two are the biggest technology companies in the world, and Google actually started from the founder's own personal problem. They were completing their PhDs on physics, and they were having difficulty in terms of finding research material and so on. So what they did, they built a crawler where they can crawl some very specific text that would help to complete their PhD thesis. And on the other hand, Apple exists because Steve Wozniak just wanted to have a computer. It was his hobby. He was enjoying building it, playing with it at home, and Steve Jobs actually observed that his hobby might actually be sort of interesting for other people as well, and hence the personal computing born. So these two big technology companies actually started from the starting points. But I worked very closely with almost 400 startup teams, and startups that observe a problem, preferably their own problem, and trying to solve it, are more likely to succeed. But there is always a space for startups who try to satisfy a desire. You can build a game, you can build a messaging application or social application, but my personal observation is the startups that solve a problem have success ratio much higher than startups that try to satisfy a desire. So we build a framework to help startups that observe a problem and try to solve it. This is only applicable to problem-centric startups, but it works quite well. So, according to Peter Drucker, the sole purpose of the entrepreneur is to create a customer. And, building a product is a mixture of science, engineering, and art. And you have to do several iterations in order to find the perfect demand and product mix for your startup. I mean, there are several examples. For instance, YouTube started as a video dating service, or PayPal started as a cryptology firm, and then on the way, they found out that customers were actually seeking something else, and they pivoted into them and become really, really big names in tech. So we consider entrepreneurs as business experimentalists. It's pretty much like the scientists of the Age of Enlightenment. You have to go through several tests. Just a similar example, I mean, Mark Zuckerberg is not so successful because he was so creative. He was so successful because he executed tens of thousands of social experiments, and he gathered right insights and incorporated those insights into his product. and hence Facebook has this multi-billion user base. So Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, says that startup is a company that tries to solve a hard technical problem. And Steve Blank, who's an expert in customer development, emphasizes it's not just about the problem, but he also says that you have to have this problem frequently enough so that your product will be sustainable. It will grow in time. Now, growth is particularly important for startups. I mean, growth is the only thing that differentiates a startup from an ordinary entrepreneurship endeavor. I mean, you can set up a hair salon. I mean, everybody needs that service, but you can only serve only a few of people because you have geographical limitations. Or, you know, you can do something very niche, like a pet snake store. And even if you have one shop in Kiev, you know, all the people who wants a pet snake will find you, come to you and shop through you. But then it's a very niche market. And in the top right, we have the startup territory. And particularly software companies can very easily scale, very speedily, without geographical limitations. That's why most growth companies in the recent times are like software as a service startups. So how much growth then? Well, a successful startup always should seek 5 to 7% growth per week on top of weekly performance. Otherwise, you're not a startup. You might be a successful company, but it's more like a lifestyle company. So what makes innovative products? I want to cite to Peter Thiel's theory of building a secret. You know, Peter Thiel asks teams, you know, to identify what is valuable in the world and what's missing, what competition or alternatives are failing to see, and what your team can do about it. If you sort of find the cross-section of those questions right, you build a very successful product. I mean, Peter Thiel was among the first investors of Facebook. And when Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, was seeking funding, many people thought that social media game was already over. Because we had several local social sites, like VK, or we had some social sites quite successful, like Orkut of Google, or MySpace, Bebo, whatever you name it. But they all, you know, were based on assumption that people would use social media to meet with the people that they cannot come across in real life. While Mark Zuckerberg found something else. Thanks to his several social experiments, he found out that he get the insight that people actually wants to get in touch with the people that they know in their own lives. So Peter Thiel noticed that they saw something that no one else saw before, and he invested in Facebook. And Facebook just swiped every other social site on earth and become sort of a monogamous market leader. And, you know, it's essential to build something people want. I mean, you can be a brilliant coder, you can be a brilliant scientist, but at the end of the day, are you building something that really people want? This can be a consumer, this can be a corporate client, but is there a demand for your product? That's the major question. And strangely, building what you want is much more easier than finding out what people actually really want. And this framework is actually to sort of find out this answer, what people really want in my domain. What's their core desire or need? And Paul Graham says that, you know, find very simple solutions to overlooked problems. And if you come up with the right mix of solutions, people say to you, just shut up and take my money, and then you have this growth metrics that I showed you previously, from 5 to 7% per week on whatever metric at that stage you're looking for. But most of the time, we come across a rookie mistake that founders have this idea that they came up without really strong problem observations, and then they build a product. They gather up a team and they seek investment, they get some money, they spend it on marketing and all that stuff, and at the end of the cycle, they actually go to customer. They actually go to customer development at the end of the cycle, and they lose money and they can't sustain their business. So the better path is to start with the customer, even without starting programming. You know, you can do some validation tests before just building anything, just to see whether there's a demand or not. So how does one get an innovative product idea? Maybe the secret is not thinking of great ideas. Maybe the secret is, instead of thinking ideas, maybe the secret is, you know, trying to observe the problems around you. Like I cited the examples, Wozniak wanted a computer, and Larry and Sergey couldn't find, you know, the stuff they needed online. So they needed crawlers and, you know, seek for them and all that. And one of the things is, I mean, you don't necessarily, like Larry and Sergey, supposed to solve your own problems. Maybe you observe somebody else's problem. That's fine. I mean, if you're a good observer, that is very fine. But then you're supposed to make this problem your own problem, to observe it really better. By that, I'm just citing an example. This is something that, you know, Turkish founders don't do, and we criticize them heavily because they have this hypothesis, but they don't really experience the problem, or the problem owners experience. Like, this is a Y Combinator company, Homejoy. They couldn't succeed, but they have an interesting story. Homejoy was an on-demand cleaning service. I have this sort of very dirty house. I push a button, and then Homejoy sort of refers me to cleaning people who can, you know, clean up my house and all that stuff. And Adora, the founder, was a PhD candidate. She quit her PhD and founded the startup. But to understand the real problem, she actually worked as a cleaning person for 3 months. Another team at Stanford came up with a solution, with a service app, where you go to a restaurant, you don't have to wait for the waiter, you can just, you know, order your stuff, even if the waiters are busy, and then, thanks to this application, your order will come. And to understand the whole experience, they worked as waiters for 3 months. So it's fine if you observe somebody else's problem, but as investors, the first thing that we ask, did you make this problem your own problem? Did you experience this problem to its sort of deep knowledge and deep experience? So what are the attributes over the problems? First, they're supposed to be hard to solve. I mean, you can validate many ideas, but if it's not a hard problem to solve, then you'll face with a significant amount of competition. I mean, you've seen brilliant startups sort of experiencing really high growth, but then we always have this question, will they be able to sustain this competitive position? Because it's an easy thing to do. Somebody else can replicate them, and, you know, with more marketing muscle, can actually exceed them. And is it schleppy? Does it require so much effort to build, like R&D or complicated programming algorithm, or whatever you name it? And some unsexy stuff is actually more attractive. Like in Turkey, we had this startup who were doing a social gifting service where you can join up your wallets and buy gifts to your friends, and they saw very little traction. But on the way, they noticed that B2B companies, small companies, were having difficulty in terms of their credit card limits. So they had the opportunity to turn it into sort of a credit card limit increase product where a small company can buy stuff much more easily. But they didn't pursue that opportunity. They had the growth because for them it wasn't sexy enough. I mean, and that problem still exists in Turkey. And because it's unsexy, nobody else sort of try to solve it still. And finally, is it frequent and urgent? Like, these frequency and urgency actually makes it a bit more like, is it a vitamin or a painkiller stuff? That question. I mean, Dropbox, for instance, looks very basic for us, for the user, but it's actually a very hard problem to solve because it's supposed to work at every operating system, every connection speed, every concurrent usage, every sort of concurrent save and all that stuff, and it still works perfectly. So it's a very hard problem to solve, and it's a very frequently an urgent problem that we all needed. I mean, before Dropbox, we used to, you know, send it in our mails to ourselves or put it in our iPod or whatever it is. So how do we notice if it's a painkiller product or a vitamin product? I mean, first of all, you should be able to cultivate a secret. Like I cited the example of Peter Thiel's investment in Facebook because Mark Zuckerberg saw something that nobody else saw. That's a secret. Or your technical capability. I mean, you might be an expert in AI and machine learning, and you can build a secret, a defendable secret. That's very fine too. But at the end of the day, you have to have something that is defendable and unique to you. So one of the problems that we saw with startups is one of the major missing components is the story. Like with the MVP validation, we first start with working a prototype. So it's basically, let's say, a car with a chassis and 4 wheels and an engine. And then we improve the product, put a body, put seats and all that stuff. But in most of the cases, these are what working prototypes look like. I mean, it's not a functional prototype. There's something very, very seriously missing, and that's why product fail to show traction. Now, that's solution stuff, like the story. Every product should have a story. We use McKinsey's storytelling tool, SCQA. So it's a situation, complication, question and answer. At the accelerator programs, we do this, and the program participants present this sort of logical argument to their other, friends in the program, and most products fail to pass this initial test. This is a brilliant test. It's been, this framework is being created by Barbara Minto, one of the first female consultants of McKinsey, and they told her that you're very good at presentations and go outside US and teach sort of foreign people, foreign McKinsey consultants how to present. But then, after several sort of analysis and research, she found out that it wasn't a problem of language. Some people with very bad English were making their point come across very well. It wasn't a matter of language, but it was a matter of a structure. The structure, how you propose, how you put up your idea. So she came up with this SCQA, and it's in a very simple example. SCQA is like this. I have these white walls in my home. Then I have a daughter, a little daughter, and she grows into 2 or 3, and she likes to paint, and she painted my walls, okay? So situation is like living room walls were nice and clean, and my daughter turned them into a mess. So the question is, what should I do now? The answer is hire a painter. Now, good products have this logical reasoning very well. I mean, when you say about the situation and the complication, then the question should come up, and your product should be the answer. So situation is the nearest equilibrium state, by the way. I mean, don't go back to Earth was just a gas cloud and cosmic dust type of story in terms of while you're trying to express your benefits of your product to the customer. I mean, for instance, we see climate change startups, and they start with explaining the climate change, but everybody knows climate change now. Or we see diet applications, diet products, and they tell us about the harms of obesity and all that stuff, but everybody knows it now. So you should go back to the nearest equilibrium state and tell your customer what has changed. And most important of all, you should tell a compelling story that people can relate. For instance, this is a safe USB charger, and it's just, even with this sort of image, you can understand the story, the purpose, the value proposition of the product very easily. Okay, now we move on to customer, we move on to persona. The objective is to make what people want. And how do we pick a customer? Well, first of all, we should target someone who is aware of his or her problem and who tried to solve his or her problem with some more basic ways, and even, try to hack something together with his or her friends. Now, this is the persona type that we use. We always use sketches because human mind is perceptive into different inputs. Like if I tell you something, when you hear it, you visualize it like a film. When you read something from a book, you hear a voice inside your brain. And when you see something, it triggers some other parts in your brain as well. So for teams, it's always great to stimulate different inputs of the brain. So this is why we use sketches. This is a product that we sort of did at an accelerator camp. It's called the Stalker. You know, he or she's get left, dumped by their old ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, and you want to pursue them, look at their profiles, how they are doing, and it's called the Stalker. It's a simple way. So what we do is with the persona, we try to sketch how the person, how the potential customer that we have in mind actually feels at the sort of core of this problem. What they do, what they experience. We try to sketch it with an emphasis on the emotions. And then we put on the facts like demographics and all that stuff, and related facts as well in relation to our product. For instance, if you're going for an organic e-commerce site, you should maybe want to put your persona doesn't eat meat or he or she is a vegan. But for that product, it's not an issue. I mean, the facts are pretty much related to your own product. And then we seek behaviors and desires. These are very important. These are our assumptions. And once we identify these assumptions, we identify the most critical ones. If our hypothesis is wrong, where and how the product will fail. So what we do is we go out and sketch a topic map and go to interviews with the persona, with the potential customer. Then we come up and with this, with our hypothesis, we put down on the wall with Post-its and try to seek behavioral clusters and desire clusters. This is sort of the primary starting point for validation in a sense, in order to be able to identify what will be the unique value proposition that you will present to your customer. And then we have this other exercise called 6UP. We sketch the sort of UEP use cases with this product, how my persona will use this product. We sketch, you know, several of them, and at the end, team votes one, and this is basically the UEP of your product. This is the main feature of your MVP. So then, without building anything, we put teams to do a smoke test. It's called smoke test because, you know, the first tech startups in Silicon Valley were more hardware startups like Apple, HP, and all that. So the first thing that they do is once they put up integrated circuit, they will just put it in the plug and see if it works or not. If it burns, then the product is wrong. So you try to see whether there's a demand for your product with the smoke test. And it's also very, okay? Okay, guys, I have to finish now. I exceeded my time, but on Friday I have this validation camp. I'll probably, you know, talk more about those. And you're most welcome to, if you're interested, most welcome to learn more about how to validate, how to find product market fit. Thank you.